Hi, I'm CJ and this is my RC channel. Okay, so I am going to run a +1 axle height transmission setup. So that's this one right here. That's the first level up from base. So that means I need one of these, another one of those, and then I need a pair that point 1 and up. Okay, that's 3.5. That's the bottom one. 1.75. That's for a 1.75. Okay, there's a 1 and pointed up. Oops. That's a 0. That's a 0. There's my second 1.0. So that's my, those are for the middle. So these give me the transmission I want, or the axle height, diff height would be more correct. The correct term would be diff height. Axle height is the out drives on either end of the swing arms. So these parts go into the parts box. And let's get on with transmission building. So we want these facing up. Like that. Wait a minute, let me make sure I know which way is up. Okay. This is up, so this is correct. You need to make sure that you choose the right pieces for the right configuration and then you orient them correctly. Otherwise, your gears aren't going to mesh properly. And your transmission will either bind up or the gears will slip and tear each other apart. And that would be bad. A lot of people do complain about how difficult it is to get at this diff, but when you consider how many changes have to be made, that you've also got to change the idler gear. You've got these pieces to swap. I think it would be difficult to design a transmission that you could easily make those adjustments to, because it's not just about, I've heard people go, I wish I could get the diff out so I could clean it and stuff. Well, a well-adjusted ball diff you can leave for, months. Some people will run it all season if they don't bark it or damage it somehow. The real reason you want to get at your diff on any kind of regular basis is to be able to tune it, to adjust it. And to be able to do that, you'd need to be able to change the idler gear, which means you'd have to really crack the transmission, or there'd have to be a way to get to this part as well as this part. So it just doesn't seem practical that you could really do it. I think it's better just to make the sacrifice of having to do the work. And you know what? I'd rather, you know, take everything apart and give it a good clean, check all the bearings, make sure the idler gear isn't getting torn up, you know, look for signs of wear, things like that. You know, if it was a gear diff where I was tuning it by changing fluid instead of adjusting it from the exterior with a screw, that'd be another story. But you know, if you got a powered driver and you know the car, it really isn't that hard to take these little suckers apart and put them back together pretty quick. Okay, so now it's time for grease in the transmission, and it takes very little. So I'm going to be using my good old favorite wear reducing, noise reduction white grease. So I'm going to go ahead and push this bearing in here instead of having it on the diff. That's about all it takes. 3 little blobs. It's going to spread to all the gears. More than that, and you're bogging down the transmission. You don't need a lot of grease. You're going to see it just spread all around. See what I mean? You just don't need more than that. That was almost more than necessary, believe it or not. That is slick. I love TLR transmissions. Okay, so let's button this puppy up. Dun, dun, dun. Oh, yeah. Don't want to make that mistake. Ensure that the diff screw is on the left side of the transmission, and this is the rear, this is the front, so this is the left. So 50-50 chance I put it together correctly, but you definitely want to make sure, and here's why. It's very simple. To adjust your diff, you want to get your hands on, all right, one of these. This is a TLR diff adjustment tool, and it's basically a 2mm Allen wrench with a bend in it. And the idea is that you can, without having to pull the axle out, you can just let the suspension droop so the dog bone pulls back, and you can slide this sucker in behind the dog bone and turn the wheel on the opposite side until you click into the bolt, and then you can hold this still and turn the wheel on the opposite side to loosen or tighten the differential. Now on this side you've got the motor and the gear, and it's harder to get to. It's not as hard now because we've got these longer lay down transmissions, but on the older transmissions this spur gear was almost on top of the outdrive, and it was much harder to get in there with this. That's why they tell you to put it on the left-hand side. It's not because it's going to unwind it, you know, through centrifugal force or something like that. It has nothing to do with it. It's purely about being able to reach it with a wrench. And you really want to get your hands on this. There's just no other way to go about it. So, done, done, and done. Okay, final steps. Screwing the transmission together. 3x12, 3x14. This is our 12, this is our 14. So, 04 is the 12, and that goes in the hole right here. Now, be careful when you are putting in these screws, because you can collapse the transmission, believe it or not. You don't want to tighten these down too hard. You're not trying to hermetically seal the case, okay? You just want it closed. And if you tighten this down too hard, your transmission's going to bind up, and you'll feel the difference. So keep an eye on it. Okay, and then our 14 goes in back here under this mount. See, the idea is just to hold the case closed. You've got all these pieces of structure here, the bottom mount back here, that keep the case together, keep it from coming apart. These are just to hold things together while you're working on it. They're really not supposed to, you know, lock this thing closed, because you'll start crushing the case, it'll start binding things up, it'll deform the plastic, and your transmission will be shot. If you tighten it enough, you could permanently damage the transmission case. I mean, just that is just awesome. It's, you know, part of that is the bearings, and part of that is just good transmission design. So onward. Last step is the waterfall, and we need this big sucker right here, and we need this. It's going to go in here, and our waterfall. Where did I put the waterfall? I put the waterfall over here. This is one where we could put a little bit of Loctite on it, because this screws into this motor plate here. Again, another thing that you don't want to crank down crazy tight on. Little avalanche going over here. And you don't need the, you know, a lot of this Loctite, but you also don't need it further back on the threads. It's only screwing into this, you know, 2 or 3 millimeter thick piece of aluminum. Everything else is just pass through. Another reason you don't want to tighten it too much is because you don't have it in place yet. So we have one screw down here. So So now that that's in place, we can tighten this a little more. Again, you don't want to collapse the case. Excellent. So now that I have all these pieces, tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a couple of minutes. I'm going to trim all this stuff off of the tree. I'm going to organize a few more things in the parts box, and then I'll stop banging into the camera. Okay, sorry, I kind of got carried away as I was moving along through things. I'm attaching the transmission. I've decided to change my build sheet that I've been working from. The biggest issue is that the original sheet that I chose to work from is for the 5.0, not the DC Elite, and there are differences, and the differences are enough that it is making it difficult to follow the original build. There are options and or settings on the Elite that are simply not on the 5.0, so there's no reference and there's no way for me to fill in that gap other than to just make a completely blind guess. And so I decided to change to a build by Frank Root, who is a very skilled driver and car tuner. And so I made some changes up front, just moving around a few of the option pieces. And a couple of little changes in the back as well. Again, just, you know, option pieces, different spacers, things of that nature. But at least now I have a build that I can go from, and everything on that build is available in this car. It even has the same tires that I'm using, so that's very nice as well. Okay, let me show you a few little tricks. For example, number one, these were a little tight originally, and it's not that they are, it's not that they're tight as far as the pin going through them. It was the amount of space. If you recall, I realized that this had to be a 3mm, not a 4, and indeed on the new build sheet that I'm working from, it is 3mm, not 4. So to kind of loosen this up, I just took a file and just a few strokes on either side of this piece here, mainly the insert itself, and just, you know, a few strokes on either side and put it back together, and, you know, it totally made up for that. That, in other words, it's not over tight anymore. Everything moves smoothly once again. Now here's another trick that will make figuring out your inserts a lot easier. I took a silver Sharpie, and I've done this with different colored Sharpies on plastic inserts before, and you basically just go over it with the tip of the Sharpie at an angle so that you don't get the Sharpie into the stamped areas, and it makes it a lot easier to read the numbers and identify the little dots, what direction things point, and it really helps. It's worth doing. Just takes a couple of minutes. Just leave it to dry for a while, and then throw them in the parts box for later. Okay, transmission is attached. So, let's go ahead and mount this part. You'll notice I took off the 22-gram brass piece. That was not in this other build. I may need to add some weight later, but we'll see how it goes. So, okay, that is +1. Let's see, what size hardware is that? 3x12s. And as long as I'm doing that, let's see, 3x10s. Okay. Gonna just thread these holes real quick. Yeah, that's a bit of a problem. Okay. Oops. Good thing I have a wrench that has the ball type end that you can get at these from an angle. Really handy. Definitely got to be careful with these. I'm sure you're familiar with this type. It lets you get a bit of an angle on the wrench, but you cannot put as much torque onto them or you will damage the screw heads. But they are very handy for certain situations, no doubt about it. Try not to use it unless I have to. Okay. Really not much left. Got axles to build, shocks to build, electronics to do, but largely done. Okay, let's do axles. Let me go ahead and put these items away here. There are some option parts I'm considering getting that I haven't yet purchased. There is, or I should say there was, on the 3.0 version, a diff with composite out drives instead of the aluminum out drives. It just has, instead of the larger black piece where the out drive and the ring carrier for the ball diff are one piece, it's two aluminum ring carriers, and then these composite out drives that key into those, and then there's a set of aluminum drive shafts instead of the steel drive shafts, considerably lighter, same length as these, and the lighter titanium out drives, I believe. And the idea behind that was to reduce as much weight as possible for the stock class, and reduce rotating mass, of course. Everything you can do to reduce rotating mass for that 17.5 motor is a good thing. It is supposed to carry forward. The only problem is you're going to lose out on some of the options. The main thing that you would not have is this new, I forget what it's called. They've got another acronym for it. Okay. On this kit, you have these 4 holes here. Okay, and the holes move the axle closer into the cup. Now that's changing the relationship of the drive pivot to the, the theoretical rotation line of the hub, and that can create more traction under certain types of conditions, or like when you're coming out of a turn and you're giving it throttle, it can help to hold the car set, as they call it, where you're which is basically keeping the rear end from transitioning, so that it applies the power better. All of these things are very, very small changes, and yet there's noticeable differences with them. Now the question is it worth losing that weight in the drive line to sacrifice that? And I don't know about that. So I'm just going to roll with it as is, with the few changes I've made, and see where that goes. And I'm going to try changing this setting a little bit and see what happens. I'm hoping in the next couple of weeks to get up to the track a couple of times on non-race days and just get some practice time in. Just sit down and drive the car, make a change, do another handful of laps, make another change, and just kind of figure out, if I do this, how does the car feel? And the best way to do that is make big changes, like you start at 1 and then go to 4, and see how that impacts the car, and then come back a step at a time, that kind of thing. But there's so many things to test and tinker with, so it's a lot. And as some of you guys know, I'm disabled, and it can be hard for me to spend the whole day at the track, unfortunately. So let's just get the bearings snapped in. So there's our 2 screws for the hexes. The hexes are in this bag. I'm going to go ahead and use black grease on these. Uh-oh, where are the grub screws? There should be. Oh, that's right. These don't. Okay, they fooled me. They left the threaded hole in the barrel, but we're not going to use it. The way these are set up, the pin is retained by the ball bearing grease. So when we slide so you got to kind of make sure that your pin doesn't come out on you while you're getting this together. But once you slide this into the out drive, as you can see, it goes in all the way. So the pin is going to be retained by the ball bearing grease. It can't escape. So there's no need for a grub screw. So let me see where the pin location is. Okay, number 1, which is the closest to the edge. So now I just need to see. We've got 2 different pins here. Is there a difference in size? Oh, they're all good. Wonder why we have 4 pins. Oh yeah, the wheel hexes. Okay, so now I know where the hole is. I got it lined up. There we go. I'm gonna put a little grease on this this out drive here, just so that it can move on the grease if it needs to. It just seems a little dry and almost corroded. If you look at the surface, it almost looks a little corroded. Should have enough grease in there. So what you want to do to make sure that pin doesn't escape on you, as soon as you get that done, put one of your pins in place and then screw the hex on so the out drive can't get out. What you want to do is kind of pinch it from the outside while pressing forward against the hex so that you're pulling the out drive through the bearings. That way you can get a nice tight fit with that hex. And there is our axle, nice and smooth. Let's put a little grease on the dog bone end. And let's slide that in and out a little bit here. Spread some grease around inside the out drive. You can wipe off any excessive leftovers. And now we can snap on our camber links. go. So now that let me adjust that a little bit. I'm really looking forward to trying this guy's build. He's running an awful lot of negative camber, 2 degrees in the front and 2.5 in the rear. That's a lot, and but it should be really aggressive. So, looking forward to seeing how it drives. And if it's a little too twitchy for me, that'll be the first thing that I just dial back on a bit, is some of that camber. But hopefully I'll be able to roll with it. I'm gonna go ahead and get this screw into the hex. Get that set up and ready. Oh, other way. Now let's find the hole in this. Okay, there we go. We are going for number 1. There we go. Okay, I don't think I'm fully seated here. I don't think the pin is, I think it's trying to get out one side or the other. It's not. If this thing isn't flush, that means the pin is trying to get out one side or the other. And you gotta make sure it's lined up, right? No, it's not going through there. It's almost as if this pin is a little long. I'm gonna try swapping it for this one. Let's see if this one goes in. Yes, all the way. Perfect. Keep an eye on that. If it isn't completely flush against the bearing, also, if you can't get this hole here, there should be like 1 millimeter of space between the pin and the bearing. If any of that isn't correct, then you may need to try switching to one of the other pins, because that pin must have just been cut or molded a little long, however it's made. Oh, damn it. I was wondering why it felt like I was turning the wrong direction. I put my link on backwards. I need the mark facing this way. To the left. Okay, let's get that dog bone tucked in there. There we go. let's see. Okay, I got a few little changes to make to the camber link spacers. And this is where that just see which position he's using here. That's a pain. Can't take that off that way anyway. The inner camber links are kind of hidden underneath the shock tower. So you've either got to remove the shock tower or you got to take off the two bolts back here and pull the plate back, which is probably the easiest way to go. Sorry, I was just looking at the build sheet again, getting an eye for something. So I have a either a half or a 1 millimeter spacer under here, and his build calls for no spacers under the ball stud. And there is something else interesting in this build that I'll show you in just a second. See how nice that is to be able to just go in through the top of the ball cup and not have to pop these links off just to make a spacer adjustment. Okay, now, interesting thing, he wants this spacer removed. He's running 0 spacers here, which means that we're really getting a long camber link, which is interesting. Now, my guess is with a long camber link like that, and considering he's not running any spacers over there, that that high camber that he's running, 2.5, it's either going to stay 2.5 as the wheel rises, or it might even decrease a little bit. I'll have to check that. That's going to be interesting to see. Okay, now since we're not running the spacers, I can run a shorter bolt here. And I should. There's no point in having metal sticking out like that. So, these 10s or 12s. These must be 12s. So I can put in a pair of 10s on this side and a pair of 10s for the other side. Did I get 10s out of here or 12s? Nope, these are all 10s. I'm going to grab 8s. Let's put one in and see how it looks. Oh, that's just fine. Goes right to the end, but not out and through. Now, let me check the spacer size here for this ball link. If any. 2 millimeters of spacer. Impressive. So we may be, this may just be a massive camber machine. Let's see, what have I got under here right now? Well, I've already got 2 millimeters under there, so I'm set. None inside, inboard, and this definitely stretches out the link. Perfect. Looks like we got a bit of a wedge there. Some nice light aluminum wheel nuts. Very light. I'm gonna go ahead and drop them over here for now. So that's where that's gonna go. Looks like those are some shims. It's like they read my mind, knew what I was going to be doing with this motor by providing this nice flat cable instead of, you know, one that's inside a housing. I can run the cable right down here and just lay a piece of tape over top of it, and that's excellent. Okay, 25 tooth pinion made of plastic and aluminum, very lightweight. Now, if you're curious, polypro pinion gears, 25 tooth, part number 10025. Let's get a little Loctite on there. Not sure that's enough. That's really a skinny little gear, isn't it? Have a look at that. Okay, I've got some motor hardware over here. It's titanium motor screws with some nice big aluminum washers. Oh. I'm not tightening things down, I'm just seeing about position. Okay, that doesn't quite reach, so I'm going to need to do a different motor hole for that. Oh, I see what's going on.
Personalized expert coaching and revolutionary.
Sorry, I had something on pause there. I don't have this on. There we go. Put that smack dab in the middle of the gear. Make sure we got proper gear lash. There we go, that's better. It's a little too much first. Good. Just trying to get that sensor wire under here. The motor's right on top of the waterfall. Hope the wire's long enough on this. It's a fan motor. Rude Dog makes some nice products. I like that this fan had the rounded top. You know, why carry extra material when you're not going to use it? So this just, it's going to screw on right there, right onto our motor mount, our fan mount. So that's going to blow air onto the motor, help keep it cool. So we need a countersunk M3. I'm not sure I have any left in titanium that are long enough, so I'm just going to have to go with what they gave me. Go with steel. Sorry, I'm going to have to do that outside of the camera. I'll have to figure out, might have to route that around like this. We'll see. It's not going to fit down the track. Okay, I think we're done with that. And we're getting to the point where it's time for the motor mount, the car stand to work on. But it's also time to make shock absorbers. Oh, wow, it's 3:30 in the morning. Maybe I'll do the shocks tomorrow morning. That might be the better plan. Okay, I hope you guys have been enjoying these videos. Lots more to come on this kit, including lots of track time. I am gonna get some Z's and come back at this in the morning to do bag C. Please click like and please subscribe to my channel.